Let's do actual math, not percentages floating in the abstract, real numbers with a real paycheck. Say you bring home $4,000 a month after taxes. Under the 50-30-20 rule, $2,000 of that is supposed to cover your needs. $1,200 goes to wants, and $800 goes to savings and debt. Clean, simple, 3 buckets. It's probably the single most recommended budgeting framework on the internet, and there's a good reason for that. It's memorable. You don't need a spreadsheet or a finance degree to hold 3 numbers in your head. But here's what almost nobody tells you when they hand you those percentages. For a huge number of people, especially anyone living in an expensive city, that 50% needs number is not a guideline. It's a fantasy. And when the math doesn't work, most people don't blame the framework. They blame themselves. They assume they're bad with money, when actually they were just handed a rule built for a paycheck and a rent number that don't match their real life. I'm Maya Best, and today I actually want to run this rule through real numbers, show you exactly where it holds up, exactly where it quietly falls apart, and what to do instead of just abandoning it the first time the math doesn't cooperate. Let's start with what the 3 buckets are actually supposed to cover, using our $4,000 example.
50%, or $2,000, is your needs. Rent or mortgage, groceries, utilities, insurance, transportation to get to work. The test for whether something belongs here isn't, is this important to me? It's narrower than that. Would skipping this cause real, immediate harm? Losing your home, not eating, missing a bill that damages your credit. That's the bar. 30%, or $1,200, is your wants. This is everything that makes life feel worth living, but wouldn't actually hurt you to lose. Restaurants, streaming subscriptions, hobbies, a nicer apartment than the cheapest one available, new clothes you don't strictly need. This category gets a bad reputation in a lot of finance content, like wanting things as some kind of moral failure. It isn't. The 50-30-20 rule isn't telling you to eliminate wants. It's telling you to contain them. 20%, or $800, is savings and debt payoff, building an emergency fund, paying down anything beyond the minimum, investing for the future. This is the bucket that actually determines your financial trajectory, and it's also, unsurprisingly, the one most people underfund first when money gets tight. On paper, this is a genuinely good system. It's simple enough to actually follow, which matters more than people think, because the most sophisticated budgeting framework in the world is worthless if nobody sticks with it past week 2. So here's where it breaks. And I want to be specific instead of just saying it doesn't work for everyone, because that's true of literally every framework, and it's not useful information.
Take that same $4,000 a month, but put the person in a city where a modest 1-bedroom apartment runs $1,800. Add basic utilities, a phone bill, groceries, and a health insurance premium, and you're already at $2,600 in genuine needs before you've spent a single dollar on anything that could be called a want. That's 65% of the paycheck, not 50%. The rule didn't get less true. The math just stopped fitting the person's actual zip code. This is the part that quietly wrecks people psychologically. They follow the framework exactly as written, watch their needs category blow past 50% no matter what they cut, and conclude that they're doing something wrong. They cut the wants category down to nothing trying to compensate. They feel like a financial failure every single month. And the truth is simpler and less personal than that. The rule was built around national averages, and national averages don't rent your specific apartment. There's a second, quieter way it breaks, and this one has nothing to do with geography. It's income level. At very low incomes, needs can eat 70, 80, even 90% of a paycheck, no matter how disciplined someone is, because there's a hard floor under how cheap food and shelter can actually get cheaper. And at very high incomes, the categories stop meaning much at all, because someone earning $40,000 a month doesn't actually need 30% of that, $12,000 on wants, to feel like they're living well. The percentages assume a kind of middle-income normalcy, that a meaningful chunk of people simply aren't in.
So does that mean the framework is useless? No. It means the framework is a starting template, not a law of physics, and the fix isn't to throw it out. It's to adjust the ratios to your actual numbers instead of forcing your numbers to match the ratios. Here's the adjustment that actually works, and it's simpler than people expect. Instead of starting from the percentages, start from your real needs number. Add up your actual rent, actual utilities, actual groceries, actual insurance, actual minimum transportation costs. That's your true needs bucket, whatever percentage it turns out to be. If it's 65%, it's 65%. Don't pretend otherwise. Then take your remaining income and split it between wants and savings, using something close to the original ratio, roughly 60-40 in favor of wants over savings, adjusted for your priorities. You lose the tidy 50-30-20 symmetry, but you gain something more important: numbers you can actually hit without lying to yourself every month. The people who succeed with this framework long-term aren't the ones who hit 50-30-20 exactly. They're the ones who understood what each bucket is protecting against and built their own version of the ratios around their real cost of living, then stayed consistent with whatever ratio they landed on. Let me show you two people, because this is where the difference actually shows up. Priya and Daniel both made $4,000 a month, both lived in the same expensive coastal city, both tried the 50-30-20 rule at the same time, from an article that told them exactly what we just walked through: $2,000 needs, $1,200 wants, $800 savings. Daniel followed it literally. His actual rent alone was $1,900. Add utilities and groceries, and he was already past $2,400 in needs, blowing straight through his $2,000 limit. So he did what the rules seemed to demand. He tried to force his wants category down to almost nothing to compensate, cutting out anything social, eating the cheapest food he could tolerate, refusing to spend on anything that wasn't survival. It lasted about 6 weeks. Then he burned out completely and spent an entire month undoing all of it with frustrated, guilty overspending, telling himself budgeting just didn't work for people like him. Priya did the math differently. She added up her real needs first, $2,500, mostly driven by the same expensive rent Daniel had. Instead of forcing that down to an impossible $2,000, she accepted it as her real number, 62.5% of her income. Then she split her remaining $1,500 roughly 60-40, $900 toward wants, $600 toward savings, and a small debt payoff. Her savings percentage was lower than the textbook 20%, sitting closer to 15%, but it was a number she could actually hit every single month without exception, because it was built from her real life instead of a national average.
A year later, Daniel had started and abandoned 4 different budgeting attempts, each one collapsing the same way the first one did. Priya had a full year of consistent 15% savings behind her, less than the textbook ideal, but real, compounding, and never once abandoned. Same income, same city, same starting framework. The only difference was whether the numbers were built around reality or around a percentage that assumed a different life than the one either of them was actually living. So if you've tried 50-30-20 before and felt like you were failing it, here's the reframe I want you to walk away with. You probably weren't failing the framework. The framework was describing a paycheck to cost of living ratio that doesn't match yours, and there's nothing wrong with you for that being true. The move isn't to abandon structure entirely and just wing it. It's to build your own ratio using the same logic. Figure out what your needs genuinely cost, stop pretending they cost less, and then split whatever's left between living well now and building something for later, in whatever proportion you can actually sustain without burning out in 6 weeks like Daniel did.
Go do the real math this week. Add up your actual needs with no rounding down and no wishful thinking. Whatever percentage that number turns out to be, that's your real starting point, not 50%. Then decide, honestly, how you want to split what's left. That's a budget you can actually keep because it was never built to fit someone else's zip code in the first place. If this changed how you think about a budgeting rule you've tried and quietly abandoned before, hit that like button. Subscribe if you want more videos that actually run the numbers instead of just repeating percentages. And tell me in the comments, what's your real needs percentage once you actually add it up honestly? I read every single one. I'm Best, and I'll see you in the next one.